The Galactic Empire had existed for millennia, its dominion stretching across thousands of star systems. From its throne world of Varix Prime, High Commander Valor ruled over legions of warships and countless subjugated species. The Empire had crushed civilizations before they could rise, reducing once proud worlds to servitude or ash. When their probes discovered a new unregistered species on the edge of the Orion Arm, the conclusion was swift. Another primitive race awaiting conquest. Earth, as they called their planet, would kneel like the others. A fleet of 100 Imperial warships emerged from hyperspace, casting monstrous shadows against the blue and green marble below. The flagship Judicator, a dreadnought of impossible scale, broadcast its message in every human language, a voice of cold authority reverberating across radio waves and digital screens. This world is now under protection and rule of the Galactic Empire. Surrender immediately, and your people will be granted a place among our lesser castes. Resist, and we will reduce your civilization to cinders. From orbit, Legate Zelkor, the Empire's appointed envoy, studied the human response with amusement. His reptilian features curled into something resembling a smirk. He had seen this before: the desperation, the bluster, the posturing of species that believe themselves unique. He turned his golden eyes toward the central display, where the reply from Earth's leaders came through. General Marcus Hayes, standing before the United Nations Council, stared directly into the transmission feed. The man was a relic of old wars, his face lined by years of conflict. His voice, however, carried no hesitation. "This is General Hayes of Earth. We reject your demands. If you attempt to seize our world, you will find that humanity does not kneel." The council chamber was silent. The words were final. No negotiations, no concessions. On the Judicator, Zelkor let out a dry, rasping chuckle. Predictable, he mused, turning to the ship's commanding officer, Admiral Sarvek. Humans truly believe they are different. That defiance is enough. Admiral Sarvek, a veteran of 100 conquests, nodded. They will learn otherwise soon enough. With a flick of his clawed hand, he issued the order. Begin the assault. Show them why resistance is futile. High above the planet, Imperial warships moved with the precision of a predator. Swarms of fighters descended toward Earth's atmosphere, their energy weapons primed to eliminate key military installations. In mere minutes, missiles and plasma strikes reduced several terrestrial bases to ruin. The Empire had anticipated some form of resistance, but Earth's defenses, primitive orbital stations, aging satellites, and outdated missile systems, were crumbling with ease. From the ground, humanity watched in horror as their greatest weapons proved ineffective. Air bases were annihilated before jets could scramble. Battleships in the oceans were torn apart from above, their steel hulls melting under focused bombardment. Admiral Jonathan Riker stood in the underground command center of NORAD, his jaw tightening as the holographic displays showed the destruction. "They're not even trying," he muttered. "They think we're already beaten." General Hayes exhaled slowly. "Let them think that." Across the world, humanity's forces fell back, retreating from exposed positions. Cities went dark as power grids shut down. Communications scrambled, and military installations broadcast distress signals. To the Empire, it appeared as though Earth's command structure was collapsing. But Hayes and Riker knew better. The real battle had not yet begun. On the Judicator, Zelkor watched impassively as tactical reports confirmed what he already knew. The invasion was progressing as expected. Human resistance was scattered, unfocused. Another few days, perhaps a week, and the planet would be fully pacified. Yet something gnawed at him, a creeping doubt, a sensation he had not felt in decades of conquest. The humans had not begged. They had not pleaded. They had not attempted to parley. Instead, they had simply gone silent. "Sir," a junior officer spoke, his voice tinged with confusion. "We are detecting anomalies across multiple sectors. Certain energy signatures don't match known human technology." Zelkor turned sharply. elaborate. Several unidentified power sources are activating in low orbit, locations where no prior military installations were recorded. Their energy output suggests weaponized platforms. Zelkor's expression darkened. That was impossible. Humanity was not supposed to have orbital defenses of this magnitude. If these were hidden reserves, how had they evaded Imperial scans? And if they weren't human-made, before the thought could fully form, the first barrage struck. From seemingly empty space, massive bursts of concentrated plasma lanced through the Imperial fleet. Unidentified orbital defense platforms, buried in the debris fields of old satellites and abandoned stations, powered up and unleashed devastation. Imperial cruisers, unprepared for a counteroffensive, took direct hits to their shielding arrays. Several ships, caught in overlapping fire zones, erupted into fireballs. Admiral Sarvek barely had time to react before another energy spike registered. What in the void? From Earth's surface, hidden silos in remote regions launched their payloads. Not ballistic missiles. Those had already proven ineffective, but something far worse. The warheads were engineered from salvaged alien technology, remnants of previous encounters that humanity had kept secret for years. Reverse-engineered gravitic warheads, capable of warping localized space-time, detonated in precise patterns. The effect was catastrophic. Imperial vessels caught in the gravitational flux twisted violently, their own mass collapsing inward before bursting apart. Zelkor gripped the console, his mind racing. This wasn't desperation. This was a trap. On Earth, Hayes stood resolute as reports came in. They thought we were weak, he said. They thought we'd never seen the stars before. They were wrong. From the corner of the command center, Commander Alex Drake, leader of Earth's elite strike forces, smirked. Now we make them bleed. For the first time in its long, unchallenged history, the Galactic Empire realized it had made a mistake. The battlefield stretched across land, sea, and space, a relentless clash of wills between a species that had never lost a war and one that refused to be conquered. Smoke and fire choked the skies over Earth, yet beneath the destruction, humanity moved with purpose. This was not a desperate defense. It was a calculated, strategic counteroffensive, and the Empire, in all its arrogance, had failed to see it coming. Admiral Jonathan Riker stood in the heart of Earth's orbital command center, eyes locked on the holographic battle map that pulsed with shifting red and blue markers. The remnants of the Imperial fleet were adjusting, reforming their lines, adapting to the unexpected resilience of their supposed prey. Riker could feel their confusion bleeding through every maneuver. They weren't just reacting to unforeseen resistance. They were trying to understand how this was happening at all. "Status on the fleet?" he asked, his voice calm despite the weight pressing on his chest. "Phase 2 is in motion," a lieutenant responded. "Lunar batteries are holding. Kinetic strikes are forcing them to reposition, but we've got incoming reinforcements from their outer sectors. If they regroup, we'll be fighting a prolonged siege." Riker exhaled slowly. That was not an option. They couldn't afford to let this war drag on. The longer it lasted, the more likely the Empire would commit its full strength. Right now, they still thought of Earth as an inconvenience. That illusion had to be shattered before they realized their mistake. "Bring the Retribution online," he ordered. Across the dark side of the moon, where Imperial sensors had detected nothing but empty rock, the hidden warship Retribution powered up. Unlike anything humanity had ever fielded before, she was a fusion of human ingenuity and stolen Imperial technology, a symbol of Earth's adaptability. In a single breath, her experimental energy lances flared to life, cutting through the void with pinpoint precision. On the Judicator, Admiral Sarvek recoiled as one of his remaining dreadnoughts split apart like glass under a hammer. The Retribution had struck its core, bypassing its shields entirely. That wasn't possible. The technology required to generate such an attack was centuries beyond human capability. Except it wasn't. Sarvek's rage boiled beneath his skin, but Zelkor stood beside him in silence, eyes narrowing as he watched the battlefield shift. This was not an accident. Humanity had studied them, learned from them, prepared for them. Admiral, Zelkor murmured, his voice cold, calculating. We are no longer fighting savages. The word sent a chill through Sarvek's bones. He knew it, but he couldn't accept it. Meanwhile, on Earth's surface, the battle had descended into brutal, relentless skirmishes. The cybernetic warriors of the Imperial Legion were strong, fast, and unyielding, but they lacked something humanity had in abundance: adaptability. Without their central command links, they moved in predictable patterns, their tactics rigid, their efficiency dulled. Commander Alex Drake stalked through the rubble of what had once been a military complex, his rifle steady, his pulse even. His team moved with him, shadows among the wreckage, silent as death itself. They had already cut through 2 squads of legionnaires, their combat algorithms failing to compensate for human unpredictability. Ahead, a wounded Imperial officer gasped for breath, his armor shattered, his mechanical enhancements flickering with failing power. He had tried to fight, but he had never stood a chance. Drake crouched beside him, pressing a boot against the alien's chest. "How's it feel?" he asked, voice unreadable. Being outmaneuvered by the species your empire thought was nothing more than dust. The alien coughed, blood, thick and silver, dripping from his lips. "This should not be—" Drake leaned in, his expression dark. "It is." Gunfire erupted in the distance, a reminder that the battle was far from over. He didn't have time for drawn-out conversations. With a sharp motion, he signaled his team to move. They had more work to do. In orbit, the tide was turning. The retribution wasn't alone. Human forces, reinforced by newly activated warships using salvage Imperial tech, began to press their advantage. Imperial cruisers that had once been untouchable were now prey. Inside the command center, Riker watched as the enemy fleet hesitated. Their cohesion was breaking. They had never faced an opponent that adapted in real time, that turned their own strengths against them. "They're on the edge," a strategist murmured beside him. "We press now, and they'll have to retreat." Riker considered the choice. Let them run, or annihilate them entirely. He had no doubt the Empire would return, but the message needed to be clear. Earth was no one's colony. His decision was made. "All units," he commanded, "initiate the full strike." On the Judicator, alarms wailed as humanity's forces surged forward. Fighters tore through the last of the Imperial defenses. Warships closed in, and orbital platforms unleashed their final barrage. Sarvek's fury twisted into something else entirely: dread. "Admiral," Zelkor said again, this time with something dangerously close to finality. "We must retreat." For a long moment, Sarvek refused to accept the words. But the reality was undeniable. The battle was lost. With a snarl, he slammed a fist against the console. All remaining ships, retreat to hyperspace. Across the void, the Empire's vessels began their withdrawal, the space around them distorting as they prepared to flee. Humanity had done the impossible. They had forced the greatest war machine in the galaxy into retreat. As the last of the Imperial fleet vanished into the void, Riker exhaled, the weight of victory settling over him. But he knew this was not the end. It was only the beginning. The war was not over. The Empire had retreated, but they would return. Humanity had bloodied them, humiliated them, shattered their illusion of invincibility. That would not go unanswered. The only question was when. Admiral Jonathan Riker stood in the dimly lit war room deep beneath NORAD, his fingers steepled as he listened to the reports. Victory had come at a cost. Cities lay in ruin, entire fleets had been sacrificed, and millions were dead. The Earth still stood, but it would not survive another war like this. "They won't make the same mistake twice," General Marcus Hayes said, arms crossed, his expression grim. "Next time, they'll come in force. No underestimations, no hesitations, a full-scale extermination." The room was silent. Every man present understood the truth of those words. The Empire would bring the weight of its entire war machine, and when that happened, no amount of clever tactics or hidden weapons would be enough. They think in straight lines, Riker murmured. Predictable. Logical. They believe overwhelming force is the answer to everything. His gaze lifted to the star map on the screen, a vast expanse of Imperial-controlled space stretching in all directions. If we wait for them to return, we lose. We have to strike first. Murmurs rippled through the room. It was madness. Earth was one planet. The Empire controlled thousands. Even with the stolen technology, even with their newfound understanding of Imperial tactics, it was an impossible fight, unless they changed the rules entirely. Commander Alex Drake leaned forward, eyes sharp. "What are you thinking, Admirals?" Riker tapped the holographic display, zooming in on a single red mark system. Verex Prime, the homeworld of the Empire, the beating heart of its dominion, a fortress world surrounded by defense fleets that had never known defeat. "You can't be serious," Hayes muttered. "It's the only move we have left," Riker said. "They expect us to cower, to fortify, to wait for the hammer to fall. Instead, we drive a dagger straight into their throat. A bold plan, a suicidal one, but the only one that could shift the tide forever." Drake exhaled. "Then we don't just hit them. We break them." The operation was set into motion. Earth's remaining fleet, battered but unbowed, prepared for its greatest gamble. Humanity's finest minds worked around the clock, integrating salvaged Imperial tech, refining their weaponry, adapting their ships for the long journey into enemy space. The Retribution would lead the assault, its experimental systems pushing the limits of human ingenuity. But even with every advantage, they would not win through firepower alone. They needed something more, a way to shatter the Empire from within. For that, they needed Zelkor. The Imperial officer sat in his holding cell, watching in silence as humanity planned its war. He had seen much in his time, had witnessed countless civilizations crushed beneath the weight of the Empire's rule. But he had never seen this. Never seen a species that refused to break, that turned weakness into strength. When Riker entered, Zelkor studied him carefully. The human carried himself with the composure of a man who had already made peace with his death. "You intend to attack Verex Prime," Zelkor stated. It was not a question. Riker nodded. "And you're going to help us." A dry, rasping laugh. "Madness. You will never breach the homeworld's defenses. Even if you do, the Imperial Council will simply rally another fleet. Your world will burn." Riker held his gaze. "You're not a fool, Zelkor. You know the truth." He stepped closer. "The Empire is stagnant, arrogant. It believes itself eternal. But you've seen what happens when it faces something it doesn't understand." A long silence. Then finally, "What do you propose?" "The Empire is built on fear," Riker said. "Its rulers hold power not because they are strong, but because the galaxy believes resistance is futile. We change that." He activated the display, showing encrypted transmissions intercepted from the outer colonies. Whispers of rebellion. Planets watching, waiting, realizing that humanity had done what none before had, forced the Empire to retreat. "Your people believe themselves gods," Riker continued. "We show the galaxy they can bleed. We don't just attack Verex Prime. We make sure the entire Empire sees it burn." Zelkor's golden eyes flickered. "And if I refuse?" Riker's expression remained unreadable. "Then your Empire remains intact. Until the day they decide you were part of the failure, and they erase you." Another silence. Then, slowly, Zelkor exhaled. "I will give you what you need." The fleet launched under the cover of darkness, slipping past Imperial patrol routes, moving like ghosts through enemy space. Every stop along the way was calculated. Silent outposts, abandoned battlefields where old wreckage provided new resources. They were not an armada. They were a scalpel, cutting toward the heart of the beast. As they neared Verex Prime, the final stage of the plan unfolded. Zelkor's codes allowed them past the outermost defenses, giving them just enough time to strike before alarms spread across the system. The Retribution led the charge, weapons primed, its stolen technology allowing it to punch through the first line of warships before they could react. But firepower alone would not win this battle. As the chaos unfolded, a single transmission, broadcast from deep within the Imperial networks, spread across the stars. A message, in every language of the subjugated species, showing the impossible. Varix Prime under siege. The Empire, once untouchable, now vulnerable. It was not a battle for conquest. It was a battle for an idea. The idea that the Empire could fall. And that was what truly shattered them. On the surface, the Imperial Council fell into disarray. Planets on the fringes began to rebel. Entire fleets turned against their overlords, unwilling to die for a crumbling regime. The war was no longer just humanity's fight. It was everyone's. By the time the Retribution and its fleet withdrew, leaving Varix Prime in flames, the galaxy had changed forever. Humanity had not just survived. It had started something far greater,